Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. This is my second episode of the Dream Big podcast.
Congratulations. This is awesome, Pete.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on too.
Yeah, for sure. And you obviously you're my brother, so all of the listeners here, this is my brother Dan, and you've been in real estate now since what, 2011?
A little sooner than that.
2009?
About that. That's right.
2009.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I wanted to have you on because the podcast is geared mostly towards first-time home buyers. And I know you have worked with many, many first-time home buyers in your career to date for the last 12 years. What is it, 12, 13 years you've been doing this?
Yep.
I'm sure you've worked with lots of first-time home buyers. Right now you work over at Josh Barker's office.
That's right.
And you work with buyers and sellers?
Primarily sellers.
Got it.
We really focus on specialization.
And so you specialize in helping the seller.
That's right.
And that's awesome. I wanted to have you on to talk about your expertise as it relates to a first-time home buyer, because a lot of buyers in this market, they might have a lot of questions on what a listing agent is, what a buyer's agent is, and how does it all come together for them. And so, my first question would be, can you explain the difference between a buyer's agent and a listing agent? What is your role as a listing agent? How does it differ from helping a buyer?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, one of the questions on here you had before we dive into that is, I always like to share the story of how I got into real estate.
Oh, yeah. I would love that. Yeah.
You had a big impact on that. I probably wouldn't be sitting here today if my big brother Pete didn't pave a path for me. So
yeah, definitely.
No, but yeah, back in 2009, I had graduated school, and I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do, and I had a hard time finding work. If you remember, back in 2009, there was a lot going on with the economy and real estate, and you had been a lender for a short while, maybe 5-6 years or so.
Yep.
And I remember calling mom and dad and talking to mom and dad about, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm working down here in LA looking for work. I've applied everywhere, can't seem to find a good job, and I've got my business degree.
I remember you in college, you did a paper, I don't know if it was a paper or a project, and one of the project was real estate.
Yes.
You had to create a real estate plan?
Yeah, I created a plan for investors to make an investment. So whoever went to their hometown and found a really good investment and pitched it to a room of investors down in LA, their investment was actually chosen, and that was the class project.
Okay.
So I had to look for good deals up in Redding.
For real estate, was it all geared towards real estate, or could it be like a business idea or?
Real estate only, yeah.
Okay,
commercial real estate, like residential income, fourplexes.
Okay.
That type of thing. But yeah, that kind of piqued my interest in real estate, maybe a little bit ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I remember talking to mom and dad, and they said, you should call your brother Pete. He's doing pretty well with loans. You should see if you could move home and get a job with Pete. And so that's what I did. And
that's awesome.
You brought me into Megastar.
That's awesome. Yeah, at the time I was working for a company called Megastar. Yeah, and I remember because you were gonna come work for me as doing mortgages. I remember this, and then all of a sudden interest rates went up.
Yes,
and it slowed down, and all of a sudden all the refis had stopped, and I'm like, oh Dan, I'm really sorry. I don't have the business to be able to hire you. And you're like, okay. So then we kind of did an audible, and then you went and got your real estate license.
That's right.
And that's how you started. And that was in 2009?
That was in 2009, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So, yeah, it has been about 12, 13 years.
Yep.
Yeah, 14 years.
14.
Yeah, 14 years.
Going on 15.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you've come a long way. You have an amazing story.
So thank you. Yeah. Thanks for...
And maybe we'll talk about a little bit about your story. We're going to have you share a little bit, towards the end of this, of your story of how you became a real estate investor, bought your first home, and all of that. But yeah, go ahead and share with us what you do and what a listing agent actually is.
Yeah. So We truly believe in specialization. So what we found is the more specialized we can get in what we do, the higher the level of service we can provide.
I like it.
So, think of other industries, step outside of the realm of real estate and think about like maybe a doctor. Eventually doctors become more and more specialized in their craft. So you've got a surgeon maybe who's really good with
brain
knees
surgeon
or brain surgery. Yep.
Someone that focuses just on the knee.
Yeah. And
focuses just on the foot.
exactly. And the better they become, the higher the level service they can provide to their clients.
I like that. Okay.
At the end of the day, what the other reason we believe in specialization is it helps us to focus on what's best for the client. So the better we are at our craft, the better we can help our clients and put them first.
I like it. So what you're saying is you specialize in just helping mostly the seller.
That's right. So right now, early on in my journey, I did work with a lot of buyers. So I started out on the buyer side as a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
And I did that until about 2019.
Okay.
So about 10 years I worked with buyers, and then in 2019 I made that shift to really trying to focus in on the seller side.
Got it. So for our listeners, what Dan's talking about is you work with a seller. So if a buyer wants to go and buy a property, they have a person that just represents the buyer, right? And then if they like the property that they want to buy or make an offer on, they're going to have to make an offer on that property. And that property is going to be, they call it a listing agent. And so you're actually representing the sellers. Most of the time you're representing sellers. And so you're looking at all the first-time home buyer offers.
That's right.
And so when you have a listing and you're helping a seller, you're looking at all offers. So this is very important for a first-time home buyer.
It is. I mean, we're seeking out inventory. So our goal is to find more inventory for the buyers to have for opportunity.
Yeah.
So without the inventory, the buyers wouldn't have options.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're on a daily hunt, search, if you will, for finding people that are ready to sell a home.
Yeah.
In the market we're in.
Okay. Yeah, which right now we have an inventory crunch. We have lower inventory right now, and that's very much needed, finding inventory and finding people to sell the homes.
Inventory is historically down right now from what we've experienced in the last year or two.
Okay, and so I wrote down a couple questions here for you, for our listeners. So can you share some insights on how you determine the listing price of a property? Because a buyer, when they're going to make an offer, a lot of them will see a home for sale and they're like, hey, I want to offer this. So how do you actually determine the price for the home that's going to be listed for sale? How does that come about?
Yeah, good question. So, when we approach sellers, we're trying to sell it for the absolute most amount possible. That's always the goal.
The goal is to help that seller get the most amount of money.
Every seller we meet has a goal in mind, and we really want to understand that seller's goal, and buy in with that goal with them. We want to really partner up with them on their goal and help them hit that goal. Yeah. Which in every instance, that's getting the most amount possible so that they can go and do what they want to do, whether it's buying another home, moving out of state, maybe they want to downsize or upsize. So, the price really matters. So our goal is to maximize that value as much as possible.
Okay. And so how do you determine the value of that price? In other words, sorry, my phone. How do you determine the value of that price? So you go off of what they are wanting, right? But then you also have to look at other factors.
Yeah. So when
I'm having trouble with the connection. Please try again later.
With determining that value, sorry, you had to bring me back on that one.
Yeah.
Basically, we start out by looking at what the market conditions are. So we want to understand the macroeconomics. We want to understand, okay, what's going on nationally. And then from there, we're honing in on, okay, what's happening here locally in the
Okay.
county. Nationally, we're talking about interest rates and inventory.
Okay.
What's
Yeah.
what's going on there with what's the Fed doing with bank rates?
Mm-hmm.
What's any new policies out there that could affect value
see.
nationally?
Yeah.
And then once we've established a good understanding of what's going on nationally, then we're taking a look at our local market here in the county.
I see.
So we'll dive into Shasta County numbers to get a feel for how many buyers are buying every month, how many new listings are hitting the market,
Yeah.
how many transactions there are.
Yeah.
And that gives us an idea of that. And then the last thing we're looking at, once we have a good understanding of nationally, then Shasta County, and then at the very end, we're going to dive into the neighborhood analysis. We want to have a good understanding of what's happening in their neighborhood.
What homes have recently sold?
Exactly. We
Okay.
do what we call a comparable market analysis, and we take a really close look at your active competition.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, when you go to sell your home, if you've got 4 homes for sale in the neighborhood, we want to make sure we're competitive
Mm-hmm.
at the highest price possible as well.
Yep.
So we're really critiquing how do we compare to the competition,
Yeah. Okay.
And for the buyers out there, what you could take on this is, study the homes you're looking at, and then it might not hurt to study the homes that have sold. Zillow is a pretty good feature with that, or different websites like Realtor.com. You can get a feel for.
So what you're saying is, for the buyer, first time home buyer, they see a home that they love and they see the price. Let's say the price is currently listed by Dan for $350,000, and they really like the home, and they're like, okay, how do we know what to offer?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so what you're saying is they can go on Zillow. Is it the Zestimate on the Zillow that they're looking for?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, Zillow it's a tool, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not boots on the ground. So actually, I shouldn't have said go to Zillow. I should have said check out our website, reddinghomes.com.
Yeah. Well,
That'll give
actually,
you
I
a
mean,
feel.
yeah. Go ahead.
Also, you're likely working with a buyer's agent. So ask your agent to do that homework for you. I mean, that's what you're hiring them to do, to get their expert opinion.
Yeah.
If you're going to hire a buyer's agent, you want to make sure that that realtor has a good track record. So, the days of just, calling anybody and asking them to show you a home and making an offer, I mean, this is a whole nother topic, but I don't know how much.
No, this is good. I mean, this is going to help buyers,
Yeah.
first-time buyers. I mean, this is important.
You
for
can
them.
do that, but I'd really recommend calling an expert, somebody who has a track record closing a lot of homes, because a good agent won't even have to go look at comps. A good agent's going to say, hey, I've already shown these homes. I've already seen these homes, and I've sold 3 in this neighborhood.
I remember when you were working with mostly buyers, and you were actually working with mostly first-time home buyers.
Right.
From 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15. I mean, that's all you were helping is first-time home buyers. And I remember sending deals your way or talking to a customer, and you'd be like, oh, yeah, no, this house that sold this time, and this house sold over here in this neighborhood. I mean, you really understood. And the important piece to hit on this was when you were talking with that customer on buying this house, you would tell them, I think you could get it at this price, but you can offer what you want.
Yeah.
Like, this is the price that I think it's going to go for. And it might have had maybe 3 or 4 offers already on the table. And you're like, if you really want the house, this is kind of how much you're going to have to spend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what you're talking about. You want
knowledge.
You want the first-time home buyers. They need to have agents that know the market and understand the local market.
That's right. That's right.
That's huge.
The better advice, at the end of the day, when you hire an agent, you want the best advisor you can get. You want someone with a ton of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because you're making a huge decision. Having that knowledge to make those decisions just puts you in the right position. I mean, think of it this way. If you're going to buy, or, if you're going to have surgery done, or if you're going to hire an attorney to argue a case, do you want an attorney who's never done it before, but, they went and took a test and passed the test, and this is their first case?
Yeah.
Or do you want to hire somebody who's, done tons of these cases, knows how to see around the corner for you and gives you that advice ahead of time so that you're not falling into a trap.
Yeah.
You know, so looking at the inventory, is your agent studying the inventory?
So let's say I'm a first time home buyer and I want to pick a really good buyer's agent that knows the market, that understands these numbers, like you're saying. How would they go about finding an agent like that?
It's a good question. I mean, track record is pretty easy to find. You know, you can look at it online, try to track down.
The ones that are doing lots of business,
Yeah.
closing lots of deals.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And of course, you can always ask for references from friends and family.
Yeah.
And then I would back it up with what's their track record.
Yeah, I think that's the best one, right? Referrals. I think that's huge. Friends, family, someone that's already had a really good experience with that particular realtor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like it. Okay, let's say Dan, that you have a listing, right? And this one, like the previous example, is listed for $350,000. Okay, and you put it on the market, and a couple days later, you have 4 or 5 offers. What is important to you to sell the house? In other words, let's say 2 or 3 of those offers are first-time home buyers. What are you looking for? Because obviously it's price, right? So let's just assume that they're all the same. Let's just assume that everyone's offering the same price. And we can get into the differences because this is multiple questions, but
I hear you.
I know that you've probably have accepted lower offers for your customers. There was a lower offer that wasn't as high, but you picked it because of other reasons.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I want you to, if you can just touch on some of those important aspects as a listing agent picking a good offer.
Yeah. Yeah. So whenever we get an offer, you have to understand it's not me. You know, I'm not paying that mortgage.
Sure.
So think of me as the seller's advisor. So my job is to explain all the options to the seller.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I try to lay it all out for the seller just very simply. You know, I'll go over the major bullet points on each offer, starting with price, of course. And if all prices are the same, you know, the next thing we're looking at is some of the other terms, like when does it close? You know, closing is very important to a seller. Close of escrow, their timeline. Does this line up with them? You know, if I have a seller that's moving to, you know, Indiana and they got to drive for 3 straight days and they're hiring a big moving truck, and they got to pack,
and they have to be leaving on that day.
Yeah, and so they have to plan a trip like that weeks in advance. So who's going to close on that date, and who's going to honor the contract as best as possible?
Yeah.
So we're sifting through those offers for the seller to do the homework that we need to do so that the seller can make the best decision for that move. And our job is to keep it as smooth of a process as possible. And in some cases, you know, if the offer we're looking for isn't there to make it smooth, now we're explaining to the seller how we can make it as smooth as possible. Smoother.
For the seller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, you know, if all the offers were 30-day escrow, I might explain to the seller that, hey, you know, we know you're going to need to plan this trip. So what we might want to do is request or counter back with a 1 or 2 week stay back in the house. So that way, if worst case happens, it's day 29 of the escrow and we're supposed to close tomorrow, and something happens with the transaction, the seller isn't packed up ready to leave tomorrow because he's got the 2 week stay back.
I see.
So we'll want to negotiate that into the transaction. That's just one example of several things. Another thing we're looking into is their financing. You know, this is your realm. When we're looking at 4 offers and all of the offers have financing, we're taking a really close look at the pre-approval letter. Who is it? Are they local? What kind of appraisal network does that lender have? Do they have a good appraisal network, or do they have no appraisal network at all? If it's a Southern California lender or a lender from another state like Rocket Mortgage, we've been running into issues with the appraisal because they're ordering an appraisal, and we're finding that appraisers don't want to pick that up because the appraisers, when we ask the appraisers, they say, well, I'm not getting fed a lot of business from Rocket Mortgage, so I'm going to focus on the clients that I have in front of me that I know are going to give me repeat business.
Yeah.
So then that Rocket Mortgage lender is having trouble getting an appraisal on time to meet the seller's timeline to close on time so that they can make that move. So that is, time is probably the second most important thing to a seller.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it with the buyer, let's say, first-time home buyers picking a lender? How important is that on the offer as a listing agent?
Well, I mean, I just said it. It's the
Yeah.
second most important thing to
Second
price.
most, yeah. Yeah.
So if on your offer, you really want to make sure your lender is going to perform to that contract.
Yeah. It makes sense because what you're saying is that the appraisers, the local lenders, they do a lot of business, and the local appraisers, they know each of us and will work hard for us. In other words, hit the dates. Now, we obviously don't talk to them. We can't pick who the appraiser is, and it's random. So all of the compliance situations, it makes sense to where we're not actually contacting them. But these appraisers, we do have relationships with them. We do ask them to move forward and quickly get an appraisal done. Whereas what you're saying is Rocket Mortgage and some of these online lenders, they don't have that relationship built up with the appraiser. They don't know who this appraiser is. And so this appraiser may not be able to accommodate because they're accommodating the other local lenders that they have the relationships with, where they get who's feeding their table, who's giving them the business.
Repeat business.
Business.
There's something
Makes
to be
sense.
said about that.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about having a good reputation and also having a reputation to protect. Reading's a small community.
Yeah.
And, these out-of-area lenders, they have nothing to lose. So if they drop the ball heavy,
Yeah.
they're, no one's going to track down that lender and go and complain in their office, or, there's no repercussion.
Yeah.
So, it helps us on the seller side to know that it's a local lender. I can call that lender up, and I've worked with that lender in the past on other transactions, and I can really get to the bottom of what's going on.
Yeah.
And provide a smoother process for the seller. It really helps us to have more control over making it a smoother process.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So as a listing agent, what do you think are some common misconceptions with buyers, with the buyer's agent and listing agent relationship, as it relates to the listing agent helping the seller, the buyer's agent helping the buyer? What do you think? What would you say are some common misconceptions with first-time home buyers and understanding that whole process?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to give me a more specific misconceptions. Like
Maybe
what?
As a first-time home buyer, they may not know who gets paid, or how does in other words, do they have to pay for a buyer's agent? And I know there's some.
Yeah, this is a big deal right now.
This is a big deal right now. So I'm glad we're talking about it. But as a first-time home buyer, this is good information for them to understand.
Yeah.
So how does the realtors get paid, and who pays the realtors?
Yeah, good question. So the process starts with, we want to find a seller and align ourselves with that seller to help them hit their goal.
Mm-hmm.
And when we interview with a seller
Mm-hmm.
to get their home sold, we're laying out all the services that we provide to get their home sold for top dollar in the time that they're looking for, and make it smooth along the way.
Yeah.
And when we're sharing that process, we do negotiate a commission, a fee to sell the home. And that fee is established with that seller. And then whatever that fee may be, commissions are negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that fee is negotiated to, we take that fee and we typically cut it in half. Half of it goes to the listing company, and then the other half is offered out to all the other realtors in the county or in the state of California,
Yeah.
or anyone who can sell a home in California. If they have a client or a buyer and bring that buyer to the table, then we're offering out that other half of the commission to go to that realtor or that company.
And this is the way it's been for over 100 years.
Yeah, it's been that way a long time. I don't know
Very,
if it's
very,
quite 100,
very
but
long
it's
time.
a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah. I've been doing some research on this. It's been around for over 100 years of how the commission structure has worked. So, what you're saying, Dan, is that the seller of the property, they're gonna negotiate with the listing agent a certain amount of commission that would go to the listing agent, and the listing agent will then split that commission with the buyer.
That's
who-
the
or
buyer
sorry,
agent.
the buyer agent who
Yeah.
brings the buyer. So technically speaking, the buyer that's making an offer on the property, they're not technically paying a commission. It's coming from the seller's side.
That's right. And, using the right language on that is important. So
Yeah.
the seller is paying that commission on the
Mhm.
closing statement, and the seller negotiated that commission.
Yeah.
And the buyer ultimately is paying the purchase price.
They do
So
pay it in
essentially,
the price. Yeah.
Essentially the buyer is paying the full price of the home,
Mm-hmm.
and that buyer, is represented by a real estate agent, and so that
Yeah.
agent's getting paid for helping the
Yeah.
buyer buy that property.
Yeah. And for our listeners, it's a topic right now because right now NAR, National Association for Realtors, is being litigated against for a practice basically saying that the seller is not allowed to pay the buyer's agent's commission.
Right.
And they're going back and forth, and it could change. This rule could change, and it could be very different than what it is today. And I don't know what that's going to be, and maybe you don't either. But it's a good topic to understand how it works currently.
Yeah, I did a little bit of reading up on it, and basically what I gathered from it, Pete, is the lawsuit was about buyers not having an opportunity to know or understand that a commission was being paid that they didn't get to negotiate.
The buyers.
The buyers.
Wow,
The
that
buyers.
makes sense. They
Yeah.
don't. They haven't. They
Yeah.
don't get to.
Yeah, they
It
didn't.
is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah. So that is what it is. It's like you said, it's been this way for a really long
Yeah.
time, and I think this
Yeah.
lawsuit was in Kansas or
Missouri, Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah, one of those states. One of those states. We'll get you the state.
Yeah, we'll add in
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
So your question about
So,
how it
yeah,
works with commissions.
Yeah, and common misconception is buyers don't understand who pays who and how the money's.
Yeah, essentially, when a buyer buys a property, they're paying the full price for that property, and a commission is paid to their realtor through the seller.
Yeah.
But the buyer did pay that full purchase price to cover that commission.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I always when I was working with a lot of buyers for 10 years, I always would explain that to the buyers when I was sitting down with them, especially first-time home buyers, and explaining the process. I would let them know that, you're going to buy this home, and when you do, you're going to pay the full price, and you don't have to pay me directly. On the closing statement, the seller is going to have a commission offered to me for helping you buy that home.
To the listing agent. Listing agent then gives you the commission.
It goes from
yeah.
the seller to the listing agent,
agent,
and the listing agent offers to the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate you going over that. It's super important to understand for a first time home buyer. So here's another question for you. And we touched on negotiations, and with your expertise, let's say you spent 10 years working with first time home buyers and you have your experience now working with sellers. Let's say you go back to being a buyer's agent and you have a first time home buyer in this market. What advice would you have to that buyer?
man, what an
being-
opportunity you
being-
have right now. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yeah, I do too.
Dream big. I think, that comes with if you want to attain for home ownership, if you look at the last 100 years in appreciation of real estate, it's typically a win decision. you
Yeah.
know, over the long run.
Yeah.
Um,
The last 84 years since they've been tracking it, since 1941,
yeah,
Case Shiller, there's only been 7 years where real estate has actually declined.
right,
That's
right.
that's a
And
statistic.
we're somewhat in a dip right now. You know, values are not appreciating 20% anymore. So this is,
It's
in my
slowed
mind,
down.
yeah,
It's
it's
slowed down.
It's slowed down. The number of transactions over the last 2 years has been almost cut in half.
Mm.
So we have less
Mhm.
buyers buying.
Now, does that mean that real estate is going down? I mean, I obviously know the answer, but I
Yeah.
want you to explain.
Value has come down
Okay.
as for the whole county. I want to say from the peak, I think you'll have to check me on this, but I think the peak of the market was in June of last year.
So I do know the statistic on this.
Okay.
So the peak was in June of last year. I don't know the local numbers, so you may more know.
I'm speaking to Shasta County.
Okay, so Shasta. I do know national numbers. National numbers. We hit a peak in June of last year, 2022. We actually overtook that peak. We have a new peak this year,
Oh, okay.
starting in the summer. And so I can put up the graph here, and on the video. But nationally we've hit all-time highs for like 3 or 4 months up until September.
Yeah.
And there's 5 different companies that track this: Case Shiller, FHFA, Black Knight, Zillow, and there's another one. But they all are showing record highs for real estate, which is, I know you're saying there's an opportunity for buyers, and what I'm hearing you say is that there's opportunity because they have the opportunity to find homes and allow for negotiating maybe the price.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You know, I've been doing this for, you know, a while, and when I was working with a lot of buyers during 2020 and 2021, if you had a buyer, if you're a realtor working with a buyer at that time, could you imagine making an offer on a home that has 10 offers and you're trying to win?
Sorry to cut you off. How many years did you go with a market like that?
I've been doing this since 2009, and I've only seen that in 2020 and 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So
parts of 2022.
2012 to like 2018, how many typical offers were?
Depended on the deal, you know, but on the average, that's a good question. I don't want to shoot from the hip, but it certainly wasn't like 2020 through 2023.
Yeah. Okay.
Where, you know, every house has multiple offers, and you'd have to go well over the list price to get it.
Yeah.
Typically speaking, you know, if a home was just listed, this is where expertise comes in. If a home was just listed, I could tell you if it was a good deal or not based on what's been selling in the neighborhood.
I like that. Yeah.
So you know, it's really hard to put a blanket statement on how the years have been, but
yeah.
As a whole, you know, the last 3 years, properties, you know, any home could sell. I mean, we all saw the memes of, you know, shacks being listed and getting 20 plus offers, and you have to give your firstborn too.
So you're saying the opportunity for first-time home buyers, they're not experiencing that now.
That's right. Yeah. So those days are gone, and now we're experiencing a process where buyers can look for those opportunities. It surprises me, Pete, because I have some inventory to where it's maybe been on for, you know, 3 weeks, and there's no offers, not one offer.
Wow.
And the reason that surprises me is that home will sell for the right price.
Right. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, buyers or maybe their agent aren't advising them to make a lower offer on that home. And so if you know, if we're on the market for 3 or 4 weeks,
I hear what you're saying. So what you're saying is, okay, Pete, I had this property, it's been on for 3 weeks. Normally what would happen, let's say in 2008, 9, 10, you get an offer for $10,000 less, $20,000 less, but you're not getting any offers.
2015, 2016, 2017, buyers were
still making offers.
They would make an offer if they liked
coming
the home.
under.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's some good advice for a first-time home buyer. If you see a property, basically what I'm hearing you say is, if you see a property that you like, let's say it's $350 and it's been on the market for a month, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's still on the market, hasn't gone into contract, make an offer.
Doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt. Yeah.
You know.
Make an offer. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. What other advice would you have?
Look for those deals that have been on for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
If they've been on for 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say earlier was I'd rather be a buyer in today's market than I would, a year and a half, 2 years ago. Now take that with some reasoning behind it. I'd rather be a cash buyer in that market and in this market. I'd rather be a cash buyer today.
Today.
Yes.
Okay. What if you don't have cash?
You can find good deals.
Yeah. I like it.
You can find good deals.
This is my opinion. I'm going to share my opinion.
Okay.
It's my podcast. I can share my opinion.
Yeah.
So I believe that if you can afford the home, if you're a first-time home buyer and you can afford the home and you can afford that payment and it's not going to overstretch you, 100% get in the market as soon as you can.
Agree with that.
As soon as you can get in the market. The reason why I say that, Dan, is because we have 610, 620 homes on the market right now in Shasta County. In 2012 to 2019, how many homes on average were on the market during that time?
Oh, probably 800 to 1,000.
Yeah, it's more like 1,200
Okay.
on average. I in the summer months. Sorry, in the summer months.
Yeah.
Summer, inventory always comes down in the summer, and then it goes up in the winter. But when I was doing my research, it was 1,000 to 1,200.
I haven't checked it recently
Okay.
over the last 10 years. So.
Okay. So we have 600 homes on the market. And during that 2012 and 2019, homes on average in Shasta County appreciated about 6% per year. It was 5%, 8%, 5%, 8% during those years. And we had that much inventory. And so we have a really, really bad affordability problem right now. Not nearly as many people can qualify for a home. That's why I say if you can qualify, get into a home.
Right.
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 And if you can qualify, definitely go into it. And so I do believe that rates will come back down eventually. I don't know when. I'm not going to predict when. But when they do come down, because we don't have the inventory that we should, there's going to be a lot more people that can afford a home and a mortgage payment than what there are homes to be able to sell.
Right. Yeah. And then prices will go back up again.
Like what you were saying at the beginning of the podcast is you're looking for inventory, right?
Right.
So your goal is to find homes and find inventory. And what I talk about with my customers and the people that I talk to is in order for a real estate crash, we need inventory.
Surplus.
We need a surplus. We need a lot more homes for sale to
That's
have
right.
a crash. And my big question is, where are those homes going to come from?
Right. It's not going to be new construction. We're tracking that.
Why is that? You want to talk about that?
Buyer demand slowed down. So with the slowdown of buyer demand, new construction can't.
They're having a hard time.
Yeah, they can't go at the pace that they were. So they had to make some adjustments to the amount of buyers, like you said, that can qualify to buy right now.
New construction.
Yeah.
Where did the inventory, and I know the answer to this, but where did the inventory come in 2007 when we had the real estate crash?
Oh, yeah, you know this too. So we had I call them napkin loans.
Yeah.
I didn't coin that
Napkin
term.
loans, yeah.
Yeah, here, write down on this piece of paper how much you make, and we'll give you a loan, right?
Yeah.
And tell us what you do, and The Big Short, great movie on it. But buyers were basically leveraging 100% financing,
which has not
arm
been the
loans.
case.
Yeah, we're not seeing that at all right now. The loan products have been, what do you call them? A plus or?
Oh, they're all A paper loans.
A paper loans.
Yeah, we're fully documenting their
So
pay
you got
stubs.
A, B, C, and D, or how
Yeah,
far
I
does
mean,
it go?
back then there was, A paper, B paper. B paper was, hey, they had assets, but we didn't show their income.
Right.
And so then there was C paper where we didn't show their assets or their income.
Okay.
And all they did is say, I make this much and I have this much in the bank. And they put it on the application and signed their name. So they said they had that much, but obviously they were liar loans. But anyway, so the inventory in 2007, to get back on track, the inventory came from sellers,
Right.
from people that own homes,
Right. So,
right?
yeah, sorry to go on the tangent,
That's
but
right.
once everyone realized that they needed to sell their properties or they couldn't make everything float when they had a surplus of supply and they couldn't put a renter in the house, they realized, oh, we might have to sell this property.
There's
We're
way too
paying
many-
we're
way too
paying
many,
the
yeah.
mortgage on 5 homes we own,
Yeah.
and we can't get tenants in
Yeah.
these homes.
So
So
do
we
you-
got to sell them, and then you have a
So
surplus
do you think
supply.
that's so obviously it's different now with the mortgages, but this is my big question. So I have a first time home buyer webinar that I do once a month, and my listeners, I'll put the link below, but I do a webinar every month.
Yeah,
and I talk,
super. I highly recommend it. It's a really good webinar. I've watched a few of them, and
Nice.
you're giving really good information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I talk about this on
Not just because you're my brother.
So I talk about this on the webinar as supply and demand. So if someone's selling their house, back then they were selling and going to rent. But if someone sells their house, what's the likelihood of them renting another house?
I'm not seeing that a whole lot. In fact, sellers they don't want to get priced out. They'd like to get
Can
into
keep-
another home.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
keep
don't want to
saying-
pay.
yeah.
I mean, rent there's nothing wrong with renting. I mean, it serves very
For
good
sure.
purpose, but when you're renting, you're truly paying 100% interest.
Yeah.
Yes, rates right now are high, but renting is 100% interest.
Right. So if we did have a crash and we need the inventory for a crash, where the inventory came from last time in 2007 was sellers. But now today, if someone sells, they're not selling and renting, they're going to sell and buy. So does that create or does that take away from inventory? It's a cancellation.
It's a cancellation. It's neutral.
Yeah, because they're selling and then they're buying.
Yeah.
So they're not really adding inventory, and we need the inventory for a crash. So where's the inventory going to come
To
from?
answer your question, it's not going to come from anywhere, Pete. I mean, we'd need builders building a lot of
We
homes,
do,
a
and-
surplus.
And yeah. So to come back to the original question, advice that you have for a first-time home buyers is take the opportunity.
That's
if
right.
you can.
Yeah, I think you can find a good opportunity. I'm always a buyer. There's always a deal to be
Nice.
had.
That's good.
That's the mentality
Yeah.
everyone should have.
Yeah.
Um,
So, which leads me to I wanted to touch a little bit about your story and about how we talked about how you got in the real estate business. And when you became a realtor, were you a homeowner when you got in the real estate market as a realtor?
no.
So I know there's your story. I was going to see if you could just share your story of how you bought your first house, because I think it's a very interesting story that fun to hear.
Yeah. It kind of stems on everything that you were just sharing. Try to figure out how you can qualify. So if you can get to that point, first, thinking on the early stage, you have to make that decision. You have to want to be able to own a home.
Yeah.
For one reason or another. So figure out how to want a home.
Yeah.
I can't answer that question for everybody,
Yeah.
but I knew I wanted to be a homeowner. Once I established that, I was thinking about, okay, how am I going to purchase a home? So I just started saving. I said, okay, well, this is my monthly expenses. So this is how much I have to spend to live.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking about, okay, if this is what my monthly expenses are, how much more extra can I put away in the bank and save on top of that? And then I set a goal of, okay, I'm just going to save what I can and put away what I can, and then I'll wait for an opportunity, essentially.
I think that's huge. I think that's huge because a lot of first-time home buyers. I remember when my story is a little bit different. Like I didn't save, like I saved a little bit, but I didn't like set a goal in mind and then hit that goal. What happened for me was an emotional deal. Like I saw the house and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have that house. It was cheap at the time this is back in 2001. And it was a brand new home for $130,000.
I remember that in Anderson,
Yeah.
the new construction.
Yeah. Ravenwood. Yeah, and so I saw this house and I wanted it. So I made this decision to for me it was emotional. Yours was more logical, more methodical, which which is great. I mean, I think that's how it should be. Like I should have been saving, you know. So I think that's great advice for a first-time home buyer. Set a goal, start saving.
Yeah, and not all of my purchases were that way too, you know. When the right opportunity presents itself, are you prepared? I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah.
But it does start with a dream, you know, it's in
Yeah.
line with, you know, what do we want to accomplish?
Yeah.
But you're right. At the end of the day, I would say a majority of the properties I have purchased were more of an opportunity just was there.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to hit. And then all of a sudden the deal is there and it's like, whoa. And then the first thing I do is I check to see if do I have the resources for that?
Yeah. Yeah.
When the deal's there.
Yeah.
And I can tell you 9 times I don't.
Yeah.
But 1 time out of 10 I do.
You know, I've been watching this and staying up to date on this is credit card debt. And car payments now, the average car payment is about $900 a month, $900 a month. If you want to go buy a new car, Dan, it's $900 a month-ish for a new car. Credit card debt, it just reached over $1 trillion. So
It's huge.
So I think this is very important advice, and I appreciate you telling that because if you're a first-time home buyer and if you're wanting to purchase a new home, that credit card debt, you know, it takes work, you know, and we can definitely help you if you do have credit card debt. Like we help our customers teaching them how to get it, how to get rid of it, how to maximize their credit score, how to really change that course.
Yeah, Pete, this is where I really love what you do because I remember for the last however many years, you know, I'd run into people and everyone has a different situation, but a lot of times it's hard for people to know how to map out a plan.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember how many people I'd say it'd be a good place for you to start to learn where you're at, and then let's create a plan for you. You know, go talk to so and so, Peter, or you know others.
Yeah.
This is where I really appreciate what you do because you really
Thank
can
you.
help people, you know, understand where they are and help them make a plan. And it would come back around all the time. You know, I'd send someone to you, and then 6 months later, you'd say, "Okay, Dan, they're ready to go. They just left the office.
Yeah.
They hit the
Target.
plan.
Yeah.
They got
Yeah.
across the finish
Yep.
line. Now it's time to find a house. They get to go
Yeah.
shopping.
Yep.
How cool is that?
That's one of my Dan, I can tell you when that happens, like there is no better joy. I mean, I get so much joy from meeting with a family, going over their life. I mean, it's really you know, going over their whole history of life of, you know, income and credit and everything, and really helping them and sitting down and helping them. And the ones that actually do take the time to listen and to do the things, they come back. It brings so much joy to me.
It's awesome.
You know, it's life changing.
Yeah, you're changing their course.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Thank you. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Dan. Anything else? Any last thoughts on for advice for first time home buyers?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Find those good deals. Always be a buyer. You know, even if it's your first time.
Yeah.
Map out a plan. Just create a plan. Talk to Pete.
Nice.
He'll help you map that plan out to a T.
Yeah.
He'll tell you exactly where you are and exactly where you need to go.
So if we do have potential sellers or buyers, how can someone get a hold of you if they wanted to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can call me on my cell phone or email me.
I'll put it in the comments, your phone number.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yep, they can Google me. They can find me.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love you, bro.
Love you too.